It was 1944, and Adolf Hitler's forces still held Europe in an iron grip. In Italy, the American, British, and Canadian allies were slowly fighting their way up the peninsula. In the air, German and Allied bombing raids destroyed major cities. In northern Italy, partisan guerrilla forces were getting stronger and becoming a major force in fighting the Nazi occupation armies.
Do you realize that the Italian partisans kept out of the line of battle against us 7 divisions, the equivalent of 7 German divisions?
British Prime Minister Winston Churchill didn't trust the partisans. His intelligence agents erroneously told him the partisans were overwhelmingly communists. Peter Tompkins, an American OSS agent, strongly disagreed.
If you take an Italian communist brigade, right, fighting in the mountains, it's a bunch of young men who are in their 20s, who've lived 20 years of fascism, nothing more. They don't know beans about politics. The only communists are 3 cats at the top who fought in the Spanish Civil War.
In August 1944, Paul Morton, a war correspondent for the Toronto Star, volunteered for a dangerous mission. The British Army trained and parachuted Morton from a Halifax bomber into a secret base behind Nazi lines to investigate and write a series of reports on the partisans. Today, the secret base appears peaceful. Cattle feed in pastures once used as drop zones for partisan arms and ammunition. Old photos show the buildings still exist, but the men who fought here have long passed into history. The tin canisters that once held supplies, dropped from the air, now protect the barn roofs. A memorial plaque dedicated to Major Neville Temple, the British base commander, marks the farmhouse where radio reports were sent back to headquarters during the time Paul Morton was here. In nearby Cuneo, at the Institute for the Study of the Italian Resistance, Director Marco Ruzzi preserves the history of the partisan resistance. A popular book in the library is Mission Inside, the memoir of Paul Morton, published in Italian, about his time reporting on the partisans.
Could be important to find all the article of Paul Morton about Italy campaign,
yes,
and study what Paul Morton think about Italian,
yes,
about the world, and open-minded. Okay, and the fact that he spoke fluently Italian could permit to understand better the Italian mentality.
Yeah. I asked Director Ruzzi to find any partisans who may have known Morton here during the war.
Sì, certo, va bene. Grazie molte. Grazie. Arrivederci. Ciao, ciao, ciao.
Tomorrow you have to know.
He said that he know very well Paul Morton, and Paul Morton was with him at the same group.
Se ho capito bene, però non posso giurarlo, chi l'ha accompagnato quasi a Mondovì e poi l'ha consegnato ai nostri è stato
86-year-old Giovanni Ranieri remembers Morton well from 1944. Morton sent a series of articles on the partisans to the Toronto Star, but only the first one was published. The rest were censored and lost. Morton also broadcast a report of his time with the partisans on CBC Radio from London to Canada.
This is Peter Stelzberg of the CBC reporting from London. How many times have you wondered what it's like behind the enemy lines? Well, today, we're going to bring you a reporter who has just come from the German side. He's Paul Morton. Paul is going to tell you something about what it's like behind the enemy lines.
Behind the enemy lines, in Italy, it's like this. Women go shopping in badly stocked stores. And while all these normal things are going on, the 8th and 5th Armies are hammering their way towards these people, fighting and dying to drive the Germans from Italy. This is one side of the picture. Normal war, normal people waiting for the battlefront to reach them. But there is much more to it than just this. Patriot bands are roaming all northern Italy. They are hitting the Germans and the fascists wherever they find them. They are controlling villages and towns, helping the poor and oppressed, feeding the starving. And when the opposition against them grows too tough, retreating back into their mountain strongholds, fighting as they go. German-held Italy is an exciting, frightening place to be, and yet the essential normality of the people seems to be somehow bigger than the war itself.
That was Paul Morton, a Canadian war correspondent, telling you what it's like behind the enemy lines.
But Morton's reports were never allowed to be published. The Army revoked his accreditation, and he was fired by the Toronto Star for allegedly fabricating his reports. Once censored, a journalist's reports, unless corrected, distort our history.
The history of World War II still has to be rewritten.
The story of Paul Morton's censorship and betrayal by the Army and his own newspaper is a cautionary tale why journalists should be wary of manipulation by the military when covering conflict. Inappropriate Conduct. Mystery of a Disgraced War Correspondent by Don North.